Now it's rotate your phone. You can't turn the phone.
Is it working or not?
Yeah, people were watching and then it stops, so it's not very nice. Anyway, so this is we can skip to them because it's just going to repeat this in a number of different ways. Okay, so now let's skip to them. What does it say at the end? So here the light is infinite. So now I skip down to after the parentheses. Because the lights of Tod, the lights of chaos, they are infinite. Again, we said that their main attribute is that they are unlimited. Therefore, it doesn't relate to them to have all these different stipulations, all the conditions about how you bring them their korban, because they're infinite, so they don't really care if it's this way or that way. And by the way, we said that that's the root of non-Jews, which is why they have far less mitzvot. They only have a subset of the mitzvot, because really they feel more infinite. They live the more infinite aspect of Hashem rather than the finite aspect. Because infinite can support everything. Aftmein, even what is tummy. By a Jew, you have to believe that there's also rectification, meaning you're working on all these generations and doing something that's very limited. And the world looks at you and says, why are you so limited? Look, there's so many more options here. So instead, I understand there's many options, and they're not bad.
They're just not my options.
Again, Hashem told me to do this work. You do your work, I'll do my work. They can be impure animals brought as an offering, and they can't even be alive. You don't even have to shech them.
So is this?
And by the way, this is a big deal because it's not so simple that non-Jews should be able to eat meat. That's a big question, whether they should be able or shouldn't be able to. So, you're not here. They kicked you out of your house. They kicked you out of the house. I said, go learn.
I'll get another one.
חשבת שאתה גמור. יש ברכה בחוץ. יש ברכה בחוץ. Okay. Are you coming today? Okay. בסדר. So, אנחנו כמעט בסוף של קפה בצד ימין. כן, צד ימין. אני כל כך עייף שאני לא לגמרי מדבר ישר, אבל בסדר. במיוחד באנגלית. Okay, so much less limitations. כמאמר הזה על גבי חזיר שעתיד לחזור. And like we said, in the future, these lights will be made available to, meaning they will be made available and enter into the limited vessels, into the rectified vessels. So one of the things the sages say is that, why is he called a pig? Why is he called a chazir? Why is his name in Hebrew chazir? Because atid lachzor, he's destined to come back. Chazir is from the word lachzor, to come back. V'litaher, and he's going to become permissible. And when will this be? In the future, when there will be no longer any death. To say there won't be any death means that the aspect of infinite will be stronger than the aspect of finiteness. Meaning, our world right now is when Hashem reveals His finite nature more than He reveals His infinite nature. Where do we have a stronger revelation of the infinite and the spiritual? The spiritual is a little bit more, it's a little closer to infiniteness, to being without limits than the physical. So because of that, people get this idea that if I'm spiritual, well, spiritually everything is permissible. It's not true either, because even in the spiritual, we still are dealing with a finite nature of reality. But in the future, Hashem will switch it around, and what until now was the limited nature will go into the background, and what will come to the foreground will be Hashem's infinite nature. And so then when that happens, we'll have something called Tchias HaMesim. Tchias HaMesim means that death will no longer be a limit. Rather, death, which really is a limit for us because it doesn't fit into the reality right now. But actually, death is a higher form of infinity. It's actually the source of infinity.
It gives you different capabilities.
Okay, that's one way of saying it. But really, it's like when
It removes the limits of the body.
When Alexander met Shimon HaTzadik, so he came with some. Shimon HaTzadik came with some wise men.
Yeah.
So in Bechoros tells this story. I think it's in Bechoros. Maybe I'm confusing it with another one. In any case, so Alexander, who was very affected by Aristotle, so he asked, one of the questions that he asked is, what should a person do in order to live? And what he meant was ethically. How do you live ethically? What is that was a big deal for Aristotle, for Plato. They all were looking for ethics. What makes the soul more perfect, so they have a better life? So they answered a very interesting answer. They said to him, if a person wants to live, he has to die. That was their answer. What do you mean he has to die? So it's explained that really, in order to live, you have to be willing to die all the time. So one way that this was taken was, this is a famous statement: if you don't know what you're willing to die for, you don't know what you're living for. Said that's one way of saying it. That I need to know where are my limits, as it were. And when I decide, here, this I can't pass. I've defined my limits. Now I know what I'm living for. Because now I know what I'm willing to die for. This I won't. Okay, this is something. But there's another way of looking at it, which it all falls under the same type of thinking, but the other one is much deeper, which is that to die in this world really means to feel that everything is just Hashem. Because really that's Hashem's infinite nature. To pass from the world means that you're joining back into the infinite nature of Hashem. Now you would think that if you go into the infinite nature of Hashem, so that's the end of the individual, that everything is sucked up into this general, completely without limits, meaning without identity type of reality. And it's like a black hole, and nothing is left with its own information. But that's not the case. It's not the case at all. We know that after a person passes away, even though he's passed away, so he still has an identity. You can still beseech him to do things, and he still does things in the world, and so on.
Does he still affect tikkun?
Not as much as he used to before, but you can go to his siyun, and you can hear what he's saying, and so on. So it's this paradox. On the one hand, it's true, he no longer has a body that sustains his limited nature. On the other hand, he's not completely gone. Why is that? It's that way because the mitzvahs that a person does, the commandments that a person does in this world, they become a garment for him in the world to come. Meaning they retain some sense of his identity, but the identity is based on something else. In this world, the identity is based on, I guess, the body. It's based on a person thinking his thoughts, or all kinds of things that cause identity. Identity is a tricky word, but whatever it is, it's based on, in so many ways, on the matter that we live. In the world to come, since there's no matter, identity has to be based on something else. So it's based on the residue, call it, or the garment, the spiritual garment that's created by the mitzvahs that a person does. So if a person has done a few commandments, his identity in the world to come is very, it's light. It's very airy. It's not, a person did a lot of mitzvot, especially ben adam l'chavero, but everything. It creates a very strong garment for the soul. And the soul can continue to feel its uniqueness. It can continue to feel how it's not separate, but at least different from other souls. So in that sense, there's still, even in the infinite, there's still a measure, meaning the infinite contains even the finite in a different way, but it contains something of it. Like I said before, this is one topic that the Rebbe wrote. It's even in the Sikha. He says, I don't understand this fully. Like this thing I don't understand fully. What it means is that in the end, darkness becomes illuminated. That somehow the darkness of there being no limits, really, that's what space is. Space is dark because there's really no limits. It was something that there's a lot of light, there's a lot of energy in space, but it has nothing to bounce off of. You need it to bounce off of something for you to see the light. Otherwise, it's just it's too.
So we're bouncing on Mashiach or Hashem?
Of what we prepared.
Later.
Of what we prepared. You're preparing your spiritual body for that reality. In any case, when that happens, so even something like chazer, like davar acher, a pig. So he goes back to his source, and in the source, like we say, apshi means I would like. I have nothing against it, but Hashem told me not to. So in the future, it'll become permitted. So like one way of doing it maybe I don't know if this is really what it means, but now that there's going to be meat grown in a factory instead of shechted from an animal. So that's a very interesting parallel to what's going on here, that he's bringing him live animals that are not kosher. And yet this is a mincha, this is a korban. So it could be at least, again, not that I'm saying that the fact that we're going to have laboratory grown meat is the solution, but it's one manifestation of this concept. Meaning when it starts to happen, it happens on many fronts. Like, for instance, again, that for us, the nighttime is not lost, unfortunately, maybe. Like I didn't sleep last night. But there's light, so you can work. You can make the night into day. It doesn't mean that that's what it means, that the nighttime will be illuminated like the day. But you see inklings of it happening.
The manifestation phenomenon.
Good. It's a deeper phenomenon because really it has to affect you. All my darkness has to suddenly become illuminated. All those things that I can't deal with, that I can't really approach, I can't really use, I don't know what to do with. They're overwhelming, really. All these things have to become part of the integrated reality that I live in. So when that happens, it'll be much more interesting. But even the technological side of it is very interesting. It's very thought-provoking. Like, what exactly is going on? We haven't seen things like this. I mean, I don't think anybody could have, except for the people, the sages, who would have thought that there's a possibility that the Chazer would come back? When you think about this
You mean
drasha,
You mean practically?
okay, you think about this drasha, this teaching. It's in the Medrash in Shmini, Parsa Shmini. Chazir shatid lachzor. You hear it, you're like, what? What are you doing? What are you talking about? Like, how did they understand? How could you understand this even in any way? So obviously they're understanding it in a very, very spiritual manner. And then it has some manifestations that every person can understand. But it's amazing how they even thought of it. So how did they think of it? Because they're looking at everything at its most abstract source. And so they see that this is what's going to happen.
I wonder if this is what they relied upon when they were, bringing up impure animals as korbanot during the second Beis Hamikdash.
They weren't. Chas v'shalom. Not at all. Chas v'shalom. The day that was the turning point in the battle for the Beis Hamikdash was the day when the Romans brought up a pig. They were paying all the time to get kosher animals, and then some old man, it says, told them that the reason you can't conquer this place is because they're continuing the sacrificial service. So if you stop selling them, and they paid a good sum for it, if you stop selling them kosher lamb to put on the altar, you'll be able to conquer. And that's exactly what happened. They brought up a pig that day, and it says that the pig stuck his claws into the wall, and the whole land of Israel shook. It was like an earthquake or something at the same time. And that was that. That was 3 weeks later. Everything was done. So, Chas v'shalom, they never, even in the worst situations, Jews never put something on the altar.